Hi, welcome to Football Soccer. It's going to be a great show. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be talking about Greg Berhalter and his first test with the U.S. men's national team on this new era, this Berhalter 2.0. We're also going to be making a prediction. Will Lionel Messi make it to the MLS playoffs? We've got a hot take for you, and I'm glad you're going to be here for all of it. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to leave us a comment. Hit the jingle. All right, guys, I'm just going to go and say it. I like the Berhalter rehire. I know this is not the most popular opinion, but I think that Berhalter had us right where we needed to be right before the World Cup. Now, perhaps the moment at the World Cup that we were hoping for didn't quite show up, but at the same time, let's remember that we didn't qualify for the 2018 World Cup. And then we had an incredible cycle where we won a lot of our local tournaments in our confederation. We beat Mexico, and we were the undisputed kings of CONCACAF. We still are. And this is all thanks to Berhalter. We got all the dual nationals, most of the dual nationals that we wanted and needed. And we have a very competitive team, a young team that made it out of the round of 16, and a team that is very competitive and positioned to compete at home. And I think that following and giving this continuity to the cycle was not necessarily a bad thing. Now, I understand things got shaky at the end, and the Reynas, went after Berhalter, and we had this whole brouhaha, whatever. But now we have a situation where there's a bit of a clean slate. And let's not forget that the players were asking for Berhalter to come back. Pulisic and others came out and specifically asked and said that they wanted Berhalter back. And so I trust the players. I trust this team. And I have full confidence that Berhalter is the right man for the job right now. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying necessarily that I'm 100% right on this. I'm not willing to take this to my grave. I am willing to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. I think he's earned it. Yes, he struggled a little bit with in-game management. But let's see if he can improve and do a good job with Copa America. Copa America is the test. That's what we'll know if this is the right man for the job. And it's at least worth it for us to keep him, at least to Copa America. I understand that if Copa America goes wrong, whether it's Berhalter or if it had been anyone else, we're going to have to break. And that would put us in a huge disadvantage because we are going to be in a situation facing the World Cup in just 2 years without a lot of tests beforehand. But at the time right now, players are asking for him. He got us back to the World Cup. He beat Mexico every time we played against them after his first Copa Oro Gold Cup loss. But since then, we were just winning, and we were able to create a lot of depth. Now, I do think that a lot of our past players have served their purpose. Players like Aaron Long, players like Paul Arriola, even players like DeAndre Yedlin. I don't foresee these players being back, knock on wood, but who knows? You never know. I would be eating my words if that were to happen. At least on this first call-up, it seems like things are looking up. It seems like we are definitely putting all of the eggs in the basket of the younger players, excluding perhaps maybe Tim Rim here. But we are definitely looking beyond your Christian Roldans and your Aaron Longs. And it's interesting that the main focus on Berhalter last cycle was to change the way the world views American soccer. That was the theme. That's what the players were accomplishing. It seems like they were on the same page regarding this topic. And I think by all accounts, this was successful. I do think that the world, particularly after not qualifying to the World Cup, I think the world sees the United States with favorable lenses. I do think that it is not uncommon to see some top quality American players in the best leagues, in the best teams, and performing at a high level. It's also not unlikely to see the United States perform mano a mano against the best teams in the world. We saw it against England, and I think it's quite evident for the world. But Weston McKennie, in the press conference that was held a few days ago, said that the motto, the theme for this new era has changed. And now it's to change soccer in America forever. Now, this is perhaps when you would want to do that because we are going to be hosting the World Cup. And we have to seize this opportunity the way the U.S. men's national team did in 1994. Because of this World Cup, we now have the MLS. We have the high standard that we did, that we've had in World Cup after World Cup, performing sometimes at a very high level, like we did in 2002. We have academies in MLS, and this is all just a part of what it meant to bring the World Cup to home soil, and to have expectations that go beyond just participating or qualifying for the World Cup. Now we have a different opportunity. Our team has a lot more experience. Our program is way more prepared. We have a lot of depth, and we should be aiming at least at a semifinal, which is why if we don't reach the semifinal of a Copa America, I say that we are in big trouble, whether it's Berhalter or anyone else. And so with that comes the first test. And it seems like Greg Berhalter is on the right track here because he is calling up the best team that he can. Yes, he did call Kramaski, that is rubbing off of Lionel Messi's spotlight. But he's also a dual national. And I'm not saying we should do this predatory cap ties against dual nationals, but it is important to introduce a lot of these players to the system, to break them in. We also were able to get a player like Lund, who has filed a one-time switch and is now going to be vying for the backup spot behind Anthony Robinson on the left as a left back. So I'm encouraged by the call-up from Greg Berhalter. And I do think that even though Oman and Uzbekistan are perhaps not the top quality opposition that we would like to face in preparation to Copa America, we have to understand that more teams are going to qualify. These cycles that are going to be put in place in order to qualify for different countries around the world are going to start earlier. Originally, we were supposed to play Brazil and Argentina, but because they started their qualification process early, we had to settle with Oman and Uzbekistan. Now, it's going to be an interesting game. The key here is to start with the best team, to put our best foot forward, because we're not going to have a lot of opportunities. And regardless of who is, being called up, we need to make sure that those players are on the field, that the best players are getting playing time, that they are used to playing together, because once Copa America is here, there is no time to waste anything. And so it is going to be an interesting test. I would like to bring up what I think is going to be the starting lineup. And perhaps by the time you watch this episode, it may be that the game already passed. But I still want to sort of hone down on this subject of playing the best team. And I think Berhalter really doesn't have a choice. There is a lot of dissent amongst U.S. soccer fans. People don't seem to look favorably on Greg Berhalter. And I think he understands this. And I think the Federation understands this. And if we start with a shaky start, if we have a tough few games, if we are not decisive, if we don't feel like there is an improvement from Greg Berhalter 1.0 to Greg Berhalter 2.0, there's going to be a lot of pressure on this coach. So here it is. I think we're going to start with no surprises with Matt Turner in the back, with Tim Ream and Chris Richards as the center backs. We're going to have Jedi Robinson on the left and Dest on the right. That's what I think is going to be our four-man back line. I think the first surprise is going to be Luca de la Torre as the backup to Tyler Adams as the number 6. I do think that we haven't been able to consolidate this backup number 6. And even judging by the Nations League, maybe we don't necessarily need a backup per se, because if Reyna's healthy, you can put Reyna as the number 10 and then bring Musa and McKinney a little bit down with this shared responsibility to cover that area. But I do think if we're going to look for someone that is going to back up Tyler Adams, I think Luca de la Torre is our best shot, and I'd like to see him be tested with this midfield. I think then we're going to have Musa and McKinney right above Luca de la Torre playing as number 8s, and then we're going to have Pulisic on the left, Way on the right, and Balogun up top. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, it may be that things change. It may be that Greg Berhalter wants to do other things, but I really don't think so. I do think that we're going to put what Berhalter thinks is his best team, and he's going to try to silence the opposition as much as he can. I know this is impossible, but he's going to do his best to try to have the best team on the field and to try to get results early. Like I said, momentum is going to be everything. We had a pretty bad Gold Cup, but that was not the team that is perhaps going to go to Copa America. The Copa America team played Nations League. We won. It was with an interim head coach, but it's still the same backbone and it's still the same staff that was behind Greg Berhalter. I do think it's going to be an interesting test. It's going to be interesting to see what he does. I will see you on the other side. It may be, like I said, that by the time that you watch this, at least one of the games has already passed. But it's going to be interesting to see if we're right about what we are trying to figure out what he's going to do. It's going to be interesting to see if what we think is going to happen actually does happen. So I'm excited to see you on the other side of these two games. We're going to go to St. Louis first. We're going to go to Minnesota second. There's going to be some incredible atmospheres, and I'm excited to see what happens. Guys, I hate to break it to you, but Miami, they're not going to make it to the playoffs. Playoffs? They're just not going to make it. They're not going to make it. And not so much because they're not going to win a bunch of games, but because they're fighting for the spots that right now are occupied by the Montreal Impact, and yes, I just said Montreal Impact, and DC United. Now, the Montreal Impact still has 4 home games, and the first one's against Chicago. If they're definitely going to win against Chicago with or without Wanyama. But if they win one more and one away, I still think is enough for them to stay there in that position. And then with DC United, you have Benteke scoring goals again, balling out. I just don't see how they lose a lot of games, and they're playing the 2 New York teams at home. The 2 New York teams are trash this year. There's no way that DC United's going to lose to them. And then in all of the MLS's glory, we don't break for international windows. So right now, guess where Messi is? He's in Argentina. He's balling for Argentina, and he's not in Miami. So when Miami goes to play Kansas City, Messi's not going to be there. So with that comes this idea that even if Miami wins a lot of games, they just don't have a lot of margin for error, and they need to pray that Montreal and DC United collapse. And I just don't see it happening. Above that, then there's Nashville. Nashville's 5 points above Montreal. Hani Mukhtar's playing great. They already stole a point from Miami. Miami tied. It's the only game they haven't won. And so I just don't see it. I don't see it. I hope for the good of the league that they find a way to make it to the playoffs. I hope that I eat my words. I hope for the sake of Apple TV, there's a best of 3 between Miami and Cincinnati. But I just don't see it, guys. I don't see it. They're just not going to make the playoffs. Now, the best thing about David Beckham coming to the United States, it's not so much what he was able to do on the field. After all, it took him a while to win MLS Cup, and he needed a lot of help to be able to do that. What was the best thing about Beckham here is starting to loosen up this training wheels. It's the idea that we were able to now have designated players that wouldn't have to be part of the salary cap. We would be able now to just hire any player, to acquire any player, come to the league, and if they're willing to pay their salary, it won't affect even if they go beyond the salary cap. Even if one player costs more than the entire team, you can bring that player to your team if you want to, based on this rule. Now, I'm going to tell you what I think is going to be the first rule that is going to change based on Messi coming here. And that's the key here, right? When Messi comes here, the idea is that we're going to be able to usher in a new era, a time where maybe we're going to look back and we're going to think pre-Messi, post-Messi, not so much based on what he did on the field, but based on the rules and the way that MLS grew and changed based on him being here. Now, again, not the sexiest of rules, but right now we're starting to see a huge impact in Messi going to Argentina and the MLS not stopping. MLS does not stop when there's an international window, which means that Miami is going to be traveling to play against Kansas City, and Messi won't be there. Now, I'd be furious if the entire MLS, if all the owners got together and they found a way to bring Messi in. The idea in a league like the MLS is the idea of shared revenue, the idea that is symbiotic. Everybody's benefiting from Messi being here with the deal with Apple TV and so on. So there's already talks that next season we won't have this situation. We will stop when there's a FIFA window. Now, it can be a little complicated because the FIFA windows sometimes happen right before the playoffs, and that can create problems for the momentum of MLS. As you know, even when there's a World Cup, the MLS still plays. It's just very weird. I don't think we can afford to change the schedule, at least not yet. We have all these issues with weather. But I do think MLS has to do a better job of figuring out a way to not hinder the momentum of the league, but at the same time stopping for the international windows. If MLS is trying to grow, if we want to be a top league in the world, with that comes a lot of players that play for the national teams. We're already seeing that. We see that MLS was one of the top leagues, I think top 6 or 7 league of players that played in the World Cup. There's a lot of MLS players that play on the international level. And these teams should not be punished, particularly right before the playoffs, because they have a lot of players that play for their national teams. These players shouldn't be punished, that maybe they'll miss out on winning an MLS Cup or on making the playoffs because they have to travel across the world to go represent their national teams. So that's the first rule that needs to change. Now, the good news is that Tata Martino just a few days ago mentioned that there's already discussions and that there's an advanced discussion of MLS stopping for the international breaks. And that's incredibly encouraging. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm excited to follow up on this and the many rules. Soon we're going to have an episode about all the rules that need to change, the rules that can't change based on Messi being here. And I hope you join me for that as well. Oh, hey, you're still here. Thanks so much for joining me. It was a great show. We talked about USMNT, Greg Berhalter. He was a good hire. He was a good rehire. And we're going to find out if I was right or not. Now, as far as Lionel Messi and the playoffs, I don't see it happening. I hope I'm wrong. I'm sure you'll let me know if I got it wrong. And then we talked about rule changes. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of rule changes coming since Messi came to the MLS. and I'm excited to see the new chapter post Messi. And don't forget to check out our sister channel, Football Soccer in Spanish. If you speak Spanish and you want to engage, please join us there. And if English is your language, I'm glad you're here. Keep joining us. Keep talking to us. And we want to hear what you have to say. We want to add your voice to the discourse. See you next time.